Welcome, we hope you enjoy your stay here with Gale of Tales.
Blood and Stone. Origin. Written by Lena Simone. Part 3. Hidden Truth. The next day, Delaney found herself sitting in Starbucks, waiting for Silvie Hart. Her fingers fidgeted nervously with her coffee sleeve, turning it in circles around her cup. Part of her expected Silvie to be an emo gothic type, with piercings, dark makeup, and neon hair. The other half expected her to look like Penelope from Criminal Minds. She had no idea why those were the two options in her mind. But when the cafe door opened and Silvie walked in, Delaney's breath caught in her throat. Silvie wasn't what she expected at all. She was tall, looked like a runway model, but more athletic. She carried herself with a confidence that seemed to make the room tilt toward her. Even though she wore nurse scrubs, there was something striking about her, something polished and effortlessly elegant. Her hair was a pale blonde that almost shimmered silver in the light. It was in a carefree ponytail, with tangled strands at her collarbone. Not the messy kind. The kind that looked accidental but carried a quiet defiance. A few stray wisps framed her face, and soft breaths of air raised them as she walked. Her skin looked impossibly smooth, like it never seemed to break out or get blotchy. But it was the icy blue sharpness of her eyes that held Delaney the longest. They were intimidating, like they could peel back whatever walls Delaney had built. Under one arm, Silvie carried a well-worn copy of The Great Gatsby, its edges softened and frayed. The handbag she clutched in the other seemed like a relic from another world, with tapestry of intricate swirls and delicate beadwork woven into its fabric. Delaney looked down, examining her own clothes, her casual sweater and jeans, and she felt instantly underdressed. Great. Is that her? Delaney thought. Her fingers tightened around her coffee cup, as she watched Silvie stride directly toward her without a flicker of hesitation. The certainty in Silvie's steps sent a prickle of unease down her spine because they had never met. Or, had they? Silvie slid smoothly into the adjacent lounge chair, placing her handbag between them with practiced ease. There was a faint, crisp scent of something floral, like linen dried in winter air, that lingered as she settled. Making eye contact, Silvie said, "Hi, Laney." "Ms. Hart? How did you know it was me?" Delaney somehow managed to say. She was trying to inject lightness into her voice, though her stomach was doing acrobatics. "Do I look that terrified?" Silvie tilted her head slightly, a faint, almost knowing smile touching her lips. "No," she said, shaking her head slowly. "I've seen you around." Confusion flickered across Delaney's face, but before she could press for an explanation, Silvie sidestepped the coming question with one of her own. "Do you have the stone?" Delaney hesitated a second before nodding, as she instinctively pulled her purse to her body. Her fingers found the small pouch inside, feeling the solid, heavy weight of the stone through the fabric. "Yeah," she confirmed, watching Silvie carefully. Something inside Delaney screamed for her not to take it out. Silvie's eyes flicked to the pouch, and that strange, almost amused smile appeared again. "Why did you cover it?" Delaney felt a subtle, but sharp shift in the air between them, but she forced herself to meet Silvie's gaze. "Because when I touch it, it glows." That wiped the amusement from Silvie's face. She leaned in slightly, her posture perfectly composed, the casualness gone. "I know." "What color?" Delaney took a slow sip of her caramel macchiato, giving herself a second to process and procrastinate. Silvie was asking a lot of questions. Too many. And all with the ease of someone who already held the answers. "Is she testing me?" She set her cup down, intentionally avoiding the question, leveling Silvie with a deliberate look. "Professor Warden mentioned you encountered one of these entities, or at least had an experience." "What happened?" For the first time, Silvie's expression faltered, and her smile completely vanished, replaced by something far heavier, almost pained. Silvie leaned further forward. Her voice dropped lower, more intentional. Delaney barely breathed. She had a chilling feeling that whatever Silvie was about to say, that once she heard it, there would be no going back. "I was researching veil markers for a case," Silvie began, her voice low and steady. Her gaze was fixed somewhere past Delaney, as if replaying something only she could see. "It started with a family who claimed to be haunted. They thought it was just a spirit, like a friendly ghost of someone who'd lived in the house before. But it wasn't. She paused. Friendly ghosts don't leave claw marks on your walls, or make your blood feel like it's boiling when they're near. And they definitely don't pull you out of bed in the middle of the night and whisper things you don't understand, things you wish you'd never heard. Delaney swallowed. Her pulse tapped against her throat like a second hand. Silvie's eyes flicked back into focus. They described a man. Tall. Too tall. But it wasn't just the height, it was the way he moved, like he didn't quite belong to this gravity. Like he hadn't learned how to mimic being human all the way. His limbs were wrong. Not bent backward or broken, just off, like a marionette walking without strings. She drew in a breath, slow and deliberate. They said his face was blurry. Every time someone looked directly at him, it felt like their vision smeared, like trying to remember a dream too fast after waking. And there was something else. Delaney leaned forward slightly. What was it? Silvie's lips pressed together. His mouth. It never closed. It was always open. Wide. Not screaming, not smiling. They would hear whispers of voices coming from inside him, saying things in dead languages. A chill spread under Delaney's skin. The family called him the Tall One, but I found older references. He's older than the house, older than the land. He's tied to veil markers, objects or symbols that thin the boundary between worlds. Things like, your stone, and once he finds someone who hears him, he doesn't let go. Delaney swallowed hard, her throat went suddenly dry, and a phantom chill crawled up her neck. The family had a stone like the one you describe. Silvie continued, her voice gaining a quiet intensity. The symbols were different, but the glow was the same. Delaney's stomach twisted violently. The terrifying image of the creature behind the French doors flashed in her mind with vivid, horrifying clarity. Silvie's voice softened then, a strange, almost empathetic note, but the intensity in her eyes never wavered. Laney, the so-called tall man isn't a man. It isn't human at all. It never was. And it doesn't stay on its side of the veil. It is not protecting you. Delaney stared at Silvie, her heart hammered against her ribs like a frantic, trapped bird. She wanted to ask 1,000 questions, to scream, to understand, but her mind couldn't focus on anything beyond the terrifying implications of Silvie's words. Laney, you're not safe, Silvie said finally, her voice stark, devoid of any softness now. Not while you have that stone. The thoughts from the attic resurfaced, sharper now. What happened after it took the stone? And why did I find it in a box that said, for you? Am I the one it was meant for? She met Silvie's gaze, her voice barely a whisper. What do I do now? Silvie leaned back in her chair, her expression unreadable, a faint shadow crossing her eyes. Find out why you were chosen. How? Delaney asked anxiously. Silvie looked to the bag she held the stone in, then she looked back up to see Delaney watching her. Silvie's piercing eyes locked onto Delaney's, an unspoken challenge in their depths. You need to give me the stone, she said softly, but with an unmistakable authority. It's really not safe for you to keep it. Let me take it, for your protection. Delaney suddenly felt a deep, inexplicable connection to the stone. She had a fierce sense of responsibility to uncover its secrets, no matter the danger. With a tight grip on her purse, she shook her head, a defiant tremor running through her. No, Delaney said, her voice firm despite the shakiness of her hand. I need to figure this out. Silvie stood, slowly raising her hands, her movements deliberate and unnervingly graceful. She splayed her fingers wide, creating branching lines that seemed to mimic the gnarled roots of a tree or intricate veins, her thumbs meeting at a sharp point. Without breaking eye contact with Delaney, she pressed the symbol over her heart, holding it there for a long moment, as if sealing some kind of unspoken promise. At that moment, Delaney heard a faint, consistent sound, like something muffled by distance. It was a heartbeat. Perhaps you are ready then, Silvie said. Contact me when you need me, she added, her voice calm, yet laced with an undercurrent Delaney couldn't quite place, a hint of warning, perhaps. Delaney swallowed hard as she watched Silvie walk away, her words hanging in the air like a cryptic, unfinished melody. Perhaps I am ready? She said aloud as she stared at her own hands. She attempted to mimic the strange gesture, but it felt awkward, clumsy, like trying to speak a language she didn't know. The questions, the odd hand motion, the abrupt departure after not getting the stone, none of it made sense. Do I know her? Delaney wondered, her pulse quickening. What did she mean when she said she'd seen me around? Then, she realized. She never told her what color the glow was. So, how could Ms. Hart be so certain of danger? Maybe the professor told her? But, what about the symbols? I never mentioned symbols to him. And why did she call me Laney? I mean, that's not odd for family and friends, but under the circumstances was odd for a stranger. Her thoughts spiraled, questions colliding, as Silvie's footsteps grew fainter, swallowed by the ambient cafe music and cheerful chatter. Determined to get answers, Delaney wasted no time. As soon as she arrived home, she began investigating Silvie the only way she knew how. She scoured social media, expecting to find at least a LinkedIn profile, Instagram, or Facebook account. But she didn't find anything. She even searched MySpace. She Googled her name, and entered it into various search engines and still came up empty. Not even the most obscure digital footprint. Nothing? In the 21st century? Delaney muttered to herself, her frustration mounting. Okay, that's just weird. She let out a nervous laugh, trying to rationalize it away. Maybe she's an introvert? Still weird though. A pang of regret hit her. She wished she'd taken a quick photo of the mysterious woman, but there hadn't been a moment to do it discreetly. Still, she couldn't let it go. Grabbing her supplies, she decided to sketch Silvie while her memory was fresh. She sat down at her desk, the warm glow of the lamp bathed the scene, casting long, dancing shadows on the textured paper that waited for her first mark. Outside, the faint, rhythmic hum of cicadas drifted through the open window, and their sound slowly faded into the background as she became completely absorbed in her work. Silvie's sharp features, her striking blonde hair, and those intensely icy blue eyes came back to her in vivid, almost photographic detail as the charcoal scratched against the page. Her hands moved with a focused precision, capturing the nuances of Silvie's expression, the subtle lift of her brow, the knowing curve of her lips, and those piercing eyes that seemed to hold secrets she wasn't ready to share. Delaney paid extra attention to the details she remembered most, meticulously shading the distinctive bag Silvie had placed on the table. The purse, with its swirling sunburst design of golden and amber stones, seemed to come alive on the page. Each gem appeared to glow under her careful hand, as though imbued with the same inner fire she had seen in the real thing. The black leather straps and brass clasp gleamed with timeless elegance, capturing the essence of a relic both modern and storied. In the crook of Silvie's other arm, she sketched the worn edges of The Great Gatsby, its cover weathered but clearly cherished, a detail Delaney couldn't ignore. When she stepped back to examine her work, the drawing took her breath away. It was so lifelike, so real, almost as though Silvie herself might step out of the paper. Lost in thought, she left the room to grab a snack, intending to return quickly to scrutinize her creation. Her father, Theo, was in the kitchen, sipping hot chocolate and scrolling on his tablet. Hey, Dad, Delaney said, leaning against the counter. Laney, he replied, as he set his tablet down, pushed his glasses up from the tip of his nose, and tilted his head forward expectantly. Delaney rolled her eyes, but still leaned in, pressing a kiss to his forehead as she has done since she was a child. One day, you're gonna put your head down, and I'm going to surprise you and just pat it like a golden retriever. Theo smirked. And yet, here you are, still giving in. He picked up his mug and took a slow sip. So, before we go any further, I feel like I should just get it out of the way. Delaney sighed, already knowing where this was going. Go on. Theo set his mug down dramatically. I was thinking of buying. No. Delaney said immediately. You don't even know what it is yet. I never know what it is, but it's usually a bad idea. She crossed her arms, her eyes narrowing. Does Mom know? Theo gave her a sheepish grin. Not yet. Delaney groaned. Dad. Listen, he said, holding up a hand. It's a great deal. A once-in-a-lifetime find. That's what you said about the vintage arcade machine. Which still works. Barely. Theo scoffed. That's a matter of perspective. She pointed at him. And what about that custom-built pizza oven you bought for the backyard? You don't even use it. He opened his mouth, hesitated, then shrugged. Okay, that one was a little ambitious. But you know I love pizza. Delaney gave him a knowing look. Dad, a little ambitious? He grinned, rubbing the back of his neck. Fine, a lot. But in my defense, I figured we'd save money. And, did you? Or are you still ordering pizza from Bella's every 3 days? Theo burst out laughing, tapping a finger against the counter. You know, this is why, if I were king, you would be my hand. Delaney smirked, taking a bow. Rhaenyra Targaryen at your service. Not the hand, I will be king. Theo sighed dramatically. I do not doubt you, my child. But remember, I am still king. She arched her brow and chuckled. Well, go on, Dad. What was it this time? He reached for his tablet. I almost bought it, but I thought to ask your opinion first. Delaney gasped, pressing a hand to her chest. Am I hearing this correctly? Has our battle of wills finally resulted in your surrender? More like a tactical retreat, he said, winking. She shook her head, laughing, and nudged his mug. Now, tell me, what did I just save you from? He gave her a mischievous smile. I'm going to build a life-size robot. Delaney gasped, though not surprised. Dad. It would do things like take out the trash. Make coffee, he said immediately. I already have the program in mind. She groaned. Like Rosie from the Jetsons? Dad, no. Put the tablet down before I confiscate it. Theo held it up defensively. All right, you win. Good idea, she said smugly, stealing one of his marshmallows and popping it into her mouth. As Theo chuckled into his mug, Delaney let herself sink into the moment, the warmth of home wrapping around her like an old, familiar embrace. She glanced around, taking it all in. The kitchen island sat in the center of the room, its smooth granite countertop cool beneath her fingertips. The dual sink was clean, save for a single coffee mug left to dry, and the sleek faucet arched gracefully over it. Behind the island, the stainless steel refrigerator hummed softly next to the stove, both framed by warm-toned cabinets that stretched above and below. The cabinets had been refinished at some point, the wood rich and polished, though Delaney could still spot the tiny dents and scratches from years of use, proof of life lived within these walls. A fresh vase of flowers sat in the center, no doubt placed there by her mother, one of those small touches that made this house feel like home. She traced an absent-minded circle on the counter, exhaling slowly. She was home, and that should have been enough. And yet, that quiet hum of uncertainty settled in her chest again, the same restlessness that had been following her for months. She had spent so long wanting to go, to chase something bigger, to prove to herself that she could build something of her own. But now that she was back, surrounded by the very things she had once been so eager to leave, she wasn't sure what she wanted anymore. And then there's the stone. Theo's sharp gaze was fixed on Delaney. You okay, kid? Delaney hesitated, then forced a small smile. Yeah. He studied her for a second, then nodded, taking another sip of cocoa. You know, if I did build a robot, it could change everything. She let out a short laugh, grateful for the distraction. Oh yeah? Whole new life trajectory, huh? Absolutely, he said, gesturing dramatically. This place would be amazing. He's even got a name already. Let me guess, Delaney said, as she rolled her eyes. Larry, they said simultaneously. Theo laughed, raising his cup to his mouth. Delaney looked at him, and smiled. I'm telling Mom. Just then, Delaney's mother, Liv, walked into the kitchen, as if summoned. Theo gave Delaney a sharp look, and she laughed quietly behind a hand that covered her mouth. Liv always had a natural elegance about her, the kind that didn't demand attention but effortlessly drew it. Her long blonde hair, streaked with silver strands, cascaded past her shoulders in soft waves, a testament to her refusal to cut it short. It framed a face that still held traces of youthful beauty, her deep blue eyes bright and sharp beneath arched brows. They were the kind of eyes that missed nothing, gentle yet piercing. In her late 50s, Liv was undeniably fit, her figure a balanced mix between lean and sturdy. She moved with the grace of someone who had always been active, and probably teaches yoga to 20-year-olds on weekends. She wore a not-too-fitted sweater and well-worn jeans. As she walked over and opened the refrigerator door, Liv said, Theo? I was thinking we just have pizza for dinner. Delaney and Theo burst into laughter. See, they both said, pointing at each other. Liv looked at the pair, and being used to the banter between the two, ignored the outburst. She crossed the kitchen in a few swift steps before pressing a firm kiss to her daughter's forehead. The scent of her familiar jasmine and vanilla perfume clung to the air between them, a scent Delaney had associated with comfort since childhood. Liv pulled back, holding Delaney's face between her hands, scanning her as if she could read all the thoughts running through her mind. "I saw it," she said, brushing a stray curl away from Delaney's face with tenderness. Then, her brow furrowed, and her mouth curved into a teasing smirk, she added, "But you're not secretly surviving on coffee and stress again, are you?" Delaney huffed a small laugh. "Define secretly, and you saw what?" "Your latest masterpiece," Liv said excitedly. Ezra walked into the kitchen. "Family gathering, I see." He walked to the refrigerator and opened it, scanning the contents. "Hey son," Theo said, "we're doing pizza." Ezra nodded. "Dad. Sounds good to me." Delaney acknowledged Ezra with a nod, but continued her conversation with her mother. She looked at Liv, and asked, "What masterpiece?" Liv responded with a beaming smile, "Your sketch." Ezra chimed in, "The Rock?" Liv looked at him, pressed her lips together and looked back to Delaney. "I haven't seen her face since I was a child." "Where did you find that picture of her?" Delaney's confused gaze moved from her dad to her mother's face. "What do you mean?" she asked cautiously. Liv smiled but looked deeply moved. "Laney, your great-grandmother," she said, pointing toward the kitchen door as if the drawing were just behind it. More. That's her face. She must have been about your age in that picture. And you even drew her uniform," Liv said with nostalgia in her voice. Delaney's stomach dropped, and her pulse quickened. "My sketch?" Liv, clearly emotional, continued, "That purse." Liv smiled at the thought. "It was her favorite. It was a gift from my mother. Enid something, I think. She carried it everywhere, and said it made her feel like she was holding a piece of the sun in her hands." Liv smiled faintly at the memory, her fingers tracing an invisible pattern in the air. "And The Great Gatsby," she clapped her hands as she smiled. "That was her favorite book. Another gift from my mother. She'd read it over and over, said it reminded her of the important things in life." Delaney froze, her mind reeling. She had never seen or even met her great-grandmother, at least not in a way she could remember, yet her mother's words confirmed every detail she had drawn. The purse, the book, the uniform, it wasn't just Silvie she had sketched. Liv raised both hands and formed a symbol by crossing her fingers in a way that looked practiced and deliberate. She pressed this symbol over her heart. "This was our secret," she said with a small laugh. "She'd do this every time we said goodbye. It was her way of saying she was protecting me." Liv didn't press further, instead placing a hand over her heart and forming a sign with her fingers. "I've always felt her here, watching over us." She looked at her husband, these days more than others. Liv kept her hands in position, and Theo squeezed her shoulder in an assuring way, and gave her a warm, sympathetic smile. Delaney's gaze was frozen on her mother's hands, stuck on the unmistakable gesture. Her fingers were splayed wide, her thumbs meeting at a sharp point, the exact same sign Silvie had made just before she walked away. A chill ran down Delaney's spine. Seeing it once had been strange, but now, twice? It couldn't be a coincidence. Her mind raced as the pieces clicked into place. The shape, the deliberate movement, it wasn't random. It was a symbol. "I'm going to go get the menu, I'll be right back," Liv said, kissing Theo on the forehead and turning toward the door. "Laney, I want a copy," she added as she left. Ezra tapped Delaney on the arm jokingly. "So, that's the rock?" Delaney didn't reply to her mother, or her brother. Her mind spun with revelations. Silvie looked like her great-grandmother. Exactly like her. And what about the sign her mother had just formed? It wasn't just a family secret. It was another piece of the mystery somehow tied to the stone. "What is happening?" she thought, her pulse pounding. And had she really just met her great-grandmother? Does that explain Silvie's familiarity? "She called me Laney. She knew things she shouldn't know. What is happening?" Her mind was racing, all she could think about was getting back to the stone. "Dad, I have to finish something." "Love you," Delaney said, rising quickly from the stool. She kissed her father's forehead, grabbing both of his ears lightly. "Ezra, catch you later," she added as she shot up the stairs to her room. Ezra put 2 fingers to his forehead, and out to the air in mock salute, without saying a word. Theo replied with a smile, as he watched her exit the kitchen in a hurried pace. The stone sat on her desk, inert for now, but Delaney couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that its purpose stretched far beyond mere protection or harm. It felt like part of a grander, more sinister design. She studied the stone closely. Silvie was right. Delaney saw faint symbols on the surface, scratched or carved, she couldn't tell, but now, each one seemed to pulse with a hidden meaning, demanding deeper exploration. Her breath caught. There were 6 of them, arranged like a constellation, imperfectly symmetrical. She did what she always did, pulled her sketchbook closer and began drawing them, each line careful, almost reverent. Then came hours of frantic online research, her screen lighting the room in blue light as dusk pressed against the windows. She followed rabbit holes across forums, digital archives, and image databases, piecing together a truth that felt too complete to be coincidence. They were runes, Nordic in origin. More, she thought. The word clung to her, strange and intimate at once. She knew her mother had Nordic roots. It was something half whispered in passing or tucked into an old family photo, but it was never a story that had been told outright. Her mother had always been warm, unfailingly so, but she listened more than she spoke, never interrupted, never judged. But she guarded things too. Not in a cold way, just carefully. Like her past was a fragile keepsake wrapped in cloth and stored high on a shelf, there, but unreachable. Delaney stopped her mind from wandering, more than it already did, and continued her research of the meaning of the runes. They must mean something, she thought. At the center of the left side of the stone was the symbol for protection. It was a vertical line with 2 even limbs reaching up and out, like a pair of open arms ready to shield. The hand gesture, Delaney said aloud as she continued. To the left of it was the symbol for destruction. It was all sharp edges and harsh angles, like something meant to cut through. Beside that came chaos, marked by a flowing, wave-like shape with a small curved branch, unpredictable, like a storm just starting to gather. On the right side sat strength, bold and jagged, its thick offshoots pressing out like solid limbs, steady, grounded, impossible to move. Next was the symbol for journey, a long line with a hook at the top and a slanted line falling from its middle, like a road bending through time and choices. And last was the symbol for reward. 2 V shapes pointed in opposite directions, one up, one down, mirroring each other. It looked like a spinning wheel, or a reminder that everything hard-won comes from movement and balance. Delaney had pieced together enough to know these weren't just decorative carvings. Her hand, trembling slightly, reached for her phone. She needed to call Professor Warden, her voice tinged with an urgency she couldn't hide. He listened intently, then his measured tone filled the silence. The runes operate in pairs, he explained. They draw power from their counterparts. Chaos and destruction, for instance, are ignited when entities use the stone as a conduit. They then call upon the journey and reward symbols to balance the influx and aid their passage. Conversely, protection and strength activate journey and reward to banish whatever crosses from the veil. Delaney processed his words, her gaze falling back to the stone. It almost seemed to pulse in response, alive under her scrutiny. A new question formed on her lips, one she hadn't intended to ask. So, how long have you actually worked with Ms. Hart? The professor chuckled, clearly taken aback by the abrupt shift. Why do you ask? Just curious, Delaney said, trying to sound casual. She mentioned that she has seen me before, but I never got a chance to ask her where. For a few years now. I consider her a valuable asset, although flaky at times. I understand, giving her unusual interests. I know she spent a considerable amount of time in South Carolina, Professor Warden said thoughtfully, a slight pause before he continued. That's where her family is, I believe, though she travels quite a bit for work and other interests. A cold chill ran down Delaney's spine. South Carolina? She murmured, the words barely audible. Yes, why? The professor asked, his tone inquisitive. I have ties there as well, Delaney stammered, her voice uneven, the words tripping over each other. Maybe that's where we crossed paths. She hung up soon after, her mind spinning, a dizzying whirl of fragmented memories and chilling possibilities. Before she could even begin to process the conversation, her phone buzzed. Silvie's name flashed on the screen, and Delaney froze. A sudden surge of panic shot through her veins. What if Silvie knew she was asking about her? Her thumb hovered, then slammed down, silencing the phone and turning it off. She tossed it onto the desk beside her sketch of Silvie. Her gaze lingered on the drawing, and a sudden, nervous laugh bubbled up. Oh, hi, she mumbled, clearing her throat for dramatic effect. Question. Are you the ghost of my great-grandmother, or just a demon? The absurdity of her words hit her, and she laughed aloud, the sound brittle and strained. This is not the kind of stoned I anticipated being in the new year. Shaking her head, Delaney got up and grabbed the drawing. She placed it under a stack of other sketches, face down, as if that simple act could somehow hide the unsettling truths it hinted at. Exhaustion felt like a heavy cloak that finally began to settle over her. I cannot handle any more shockers tonight. Silvie, Nana, or what? Ever. We'll have to wait until tomorrow, she muttered to herself, pulling back her covers. I need to find out more about her anyway. The next morning, Delaney woke to the insistent buzz of her phone vibrating incessantly on her nightstand. She groggily reached out, squinting at the screen. 13 missed calls from Silvie. Her pulse quickened, the fog of sleep vanishing in an instant, replaced by a sudden, sharp clarity. Without giving herself time to overthink, she hit the call button, her voice still thick with sleep as she mumbled, "Hello? Laney, listen." Silvie's voice came through, urgent and sharp, cutting through the morning stillness. "We need to meet. Now." Delaney bolted upright, her heart hammering. "Silvie? What? Why? What's going on?" Silvie hesitated for only a fraction of a second, but the sheer weight in her next words hit Delaney like a physical blow. "We have no time for pleasantries or explanations. They know you have it." Delaney's eyes flew open, any lingering trace of sleep evaporating into a cold dread. "Who knows what?" she asked, her voice trembling, barely a whisper. Silvie's response came swiftly, her tone grave, utterly devoid of her previous amused detachment. "The Draugr. The stone. They know, and they are coming."
Next up in Blood and Stone Origin, Part 4, The Box. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. May these tales linger until the next Gale arrives.